Undeceptions podcast.
Okay, let's focus on your specialty. Let's go as visceral as you like. I mean, it's commonplace for you, but some of my listeners might go, what?
Well, I must tell you, I spoke at a boys' school not so long ago, and one of the boys fainted when I... and it turned out that he was Australia's boxing champion for his age group. And so, yeah, I can say that I knocked out a boxing champion.
That's
without throwing a
fantastic.
punch.
That's
So,
good knowledge for
big
his next opponent.
Yeah.
Just say the words,
fistula.
obstetric fistula.
And he's down on the ground. He's out for the count.
Tell me, what is an obstetric fistula?
So I'm what's called a fistula surgeon. I'm a gynecologist. An obstetric fistula is a birth injury. The word fistula in Latin just means pipe or a hole. So it's a hole that women get from a long, difficult labour.
That's my friend, Dr. Andrew Browning. He's an Australian-trained obstetrician and gynecologist. He spent 17 years as a surgeon in Ethiopia and Tanzania. And he's written a book called A Doctor in Africa. Not a very exciting title, but a very exciting life. It's all about his experiences as a Christian missionary doctor. Now, we'll talk about that title, missionary, in a moment. Hey, and I should warn you that some of the descriptions of obstetric fistula in this episode are pretty full on.
Anywhere in the world, about 5% of women will get into what's called obstructed labour when they have their baby. So baby's got to come through the mother's pelvis to be delivered, and it's usually the head first. Sometimes it's the bottom first. Other times it's the shoulder first, all sorts of presentations, but most of the time the head comes out first. And if the baby's head's too big for the mother's pelvis, it'll get stuck, or maybe the head's coming out on a different angle, so it gets stuck. So 1 in 20 women, when they're in labour, that will happen too. So ordinarily, you'll find that in labour, the midwife looking after you in the hospital in Australia, she'll diagnose that the baby's getting stuck. She'll call the doctor, he'll have a caesarean, an operation to have your baby, fine. But most of the women I treat, almost all the women I treat, haven't had access to a hospital. There's simply no hospitals, they're too far or they're too poor to access it. So they deliver in their village and home. And as a result, in one area where we work, 1 in 12 women will actually die in their lifetime having a baby. If you get it stuck in labour, if there's obstructed labour, then you stay in labour. And the ladies I treat have been in labour for 3, 5, 7, 10 days. If they survive, and often they don't, the child inside almost always dies. And after the child dies, sorry for getting descriptive, the intracerebral pressure decreases in the head, the skull bones collapse, so the diameter of the head decreases. They can eventually deliver a stillborn child. They're usually unconscious at that stage. It takes them on average 2 days to regain consciousness on the floor of their hut. And when they do regain consciousness, they find that they're leaking uncontrollably from their bladder and sometimes their bowel as well. The long labour, the baby's head's pressed against the bones of the mother's pelvis, so all the tissues between are crushed and has its blood supply cut off. So they're the tissues of the bladder, birth canal, rectum, birth canal. All those tissues, necrose we call it, the blood supply is cut off, they die. So after they deliver their child, all those dead tissues come away and they're left with a fistula or a big hole between the bladder, birth canal, rectum, birth canal, sometimes 10 centimetres in diameter, huge hole. Sometimes the whole birth canal is destroyed, urethra is destroyed, bowel's destroyed, everything's destroyed. So they leak, they smell, they're ashamed. Usually divorced. The husband won't have them back in their house. might be looked after by their mother. The mother won't be able to look after them in their house, so they might build a little lean-to, and I've had patients locked away in little lean-tos for 12 years, not going out at all in 12 years, smelling and just leaking urine and feces.
And is the ostracization because they're considered damaged goods now, or is it simply that they smell, or is it some other cultural thing?
All of the above.
Right.
They think they're cursed.
Right.
Other people will think they've done something wrong, they're cursed. But more that they're ashamed. They're ashamed of the smell, so they'll self-hide away, and other people will mock them when they come close to them. They'll be ridiculed, so they hide away. 40% have thought about or attempted suicide with this condition. And if they don't get surgical treatment, they'll live like that for the rest of their lives. And we think there's about 2 million patients. They hide away, so it's difficult to know the number, but they think there's about 2 million of these patients in Africa still waiting for treatment.
So tell me, mate, about Dot Thompson. You're 6 years old and you hear this missionary nurse. Tell us what you remember of what she said and what impact it had.
Yeah, so I was a little 6-year-old boy growing up in a Christian household, Sunday school every Sunday down in the Southern Highlands, Barrel. And we would have missionaries come to speak to us at the church when they were on home leave. And my father was a great supporter of missionaries, and I remember as a child also packing boxes of sutures, and also he was a surgeon as well, sutures on our lounge room floor, and even brought them to youth group to send off to various missionaries. So missionary endeavour, I guess, was very much part of my upbringing, and part of going to Sunday school when the missionaries were visiting our church, which we would support them, they'd speak to us. And so I remember listening to Dot Thompson sitting on this bare wooden floor in a freezing cold winter in Barrel, drafty wooden floor with gaps between the floors, and listening to Dot speak of Africa, the heat, the dust, the animals, the tribes people, spears, bows and arrows, and the need there. And just as a 6-year-old boy, my imagination was, sparked, I guess. You think, wow, this sounds very exciting, and so I'm going to be a missionary too.
Fast forward, and Andrew is a young medical student looking for a placement at an overseas hospital for further training. And he chose Dot Thompson's mission hospital in Mwanza in the far northwest of Tanzania. It was 1993, and in the 3 weeks before he planned to leave, Andrew started hearing on the news about hundreds of thousands of refugees flooding into Western Tanzania, fleeing the ethnic violence in Burundi between the Hutus and the Tutsis. Over 100,000 people were killed, a terrible prelude to what came just a few months later that we call the Rwandan genocide, when over 800,000 people, mostly Tutsi but also some moderate Hutus, were killed in just 100 days of terror. 2 million people fled. Anyway, Mwanza Hospital was built by Australian missionaries from the Church Missionary Society in the 1930s, close to the border of Rwanda and Burundi. It became a primary receiving hospital during the genocide.
So I was there at the end of 93 and beginning of 94. And so, yes, we had tens of thousands of Tutsi refugees come across the border from Burundi.
Any with injuries? Or
sorry?
Any with injuries? Or were they just...
Deaths, injuries, all sorts of horrible things. Thousands, tens of thousands.
Right.
And the Red Cross was there setting up camps. And so they asked me to come along to the camps. And so I would, as a medical student, I was in the camps with one Burundian doctor for the whole camp. And, as a medical student, what do you know? I mean, very little, but it was marvellous to be able to, we had, at one point there were 6 people a day dying in the camp from dysentery, but you could save them just by putting up a drip, and we'd bring the really sick ones back to the hospital, and there was machete injuries, and there was one Hutu guy that fled as well, and he was found by the Tutsis. He was just butchered, and just awful stories, and just suffering and of you really saw the worst in humanity. But in that context, just and seeing the need and what you could do to relieve some suffering just with simple things. As a doctor, I thought, this is the way I want to live my life.
Indeed. And that's exactly how Andrew has lived his life. But it's been a long and winding road. Andrew's aunt, Valerie Browning, is an Australian nurse, a quiet living legend, who's spent the last 40 years among the nomads of Ethiopia's Afar region. This is the hottest region on the planet, literally. Early in his medical training, Andrew spent some time working with Aunt Val, and it proved to be the turning point in his career. While he was there, he heard about another Aussie medical legend named Dr. Catherine Hamlin, who with her husband Reg had established a hospital in Addis Ababa to treat women suffering from obstetric fistulas. Seeing the impact that a relatively simple surgical procedure could have on a woman's life, Andrew decided to return to Australia, complete his specialist training, and then to head back to Africa to work with Dr. Hamlin. Over the last 20 years or so, he's worked in different parts of Africa, but today he's back in Ethiopia, where the journey began, and he's working alongside his Aunt Val through the Barbara May Foundation, named after Valerie's inspirational mother and, of course, Andrew's grandmother. But whatever the country, whatever the organisation, Andrew has one mission: to see women's lives transformed.
Tell me a story of the impact such a thing has had on someone you've encountered.
I could tell you thousands of
Sure.
stories, John. But one I had recently is not only a story of the impact on her, but it's the impact that these women have had on me as well, and other people around them. I mean, some of these women are absolutely remarkable in their strength. So this story is the story of Tensa. She's a lady I met earlier this year in South Sudan. She was married as a teenager, or she grew up in an arid area in the northern part of South Sudan. And as a teenager, her father sent her away to a village, to a man that she'd never met before, village she's never been to before, about 200 kilometers away from her village. She was married to that man and had 7 children. 3 died. She had 4 children. She got pregnant with her 8th pregnancy, and it came time to deliver that child, and she did what she did for the previous 7 pregnancies, and she just went to labour in her little hut in the village. No hospitals anywhere nearby, no health professionals. So she delivered all the other 7 children with no help or even pain relief. Something happened in this labour. She got into obstructed labour, and after 2 days of labour, she knew something was wrong because the 7 previous deliveries took less than a day. So at the end of 2 days, she knew something was wrong and that she would have to get help. So the nearest hospital she knew about was a full day's walk away when you're in good health. So she took her eldest son and started walking. She walked for about 5 hours, and the long labour not only affects the tissues in your pelvis, it also affects the tissues in the nerves to your legs. And it started to crush the nerves to her legs, and her legs were getting weaker to the point that she could no longer stand, and she fell into a ditch. Her son waved down a vehicle, we call them bajajs, a 3-wheeled vehicle that was driving past. He took pity on her, and they helped her into the bajaj, and they started driving to the hospital. So the road's very rocky, and these 3-wheeled vehicles are very unstable, so it flipped. She was thrown from the vehicle. The driver was injured, so he couldn't drive. They flagged down someone else who was able to drive. They righted the vehicle, took the driver and her son in the bajaj to the hospital. They arrived. She'd now been in labour for 3 days. It was too late for the baby. The baby had already died from the long labour. The baby simply can't survive such a long labour. And they operated to save her life. but she sustained a fistula, a big 8-centimetre hole from the bladder to the birth canal. So she leaked, she smelt, the husband didn't want her back. So she stayed and begged on the street of that town, object of ridicule, for 18 months. She was then found by another missionary, actually from Australia, who was living and working with her family in the northern area of South Sudan, and taken to her hospital, was fed and made strong. And she knew that we were treating these patients in Juba. And so she was flown down to us with MAF, another mission organisation.
Yeah.
And because there's conflict in South Sudan, the roads were blocked, so they have to fly over the conflict to get to us. I was only in South Sudan at the beginning of the year, just for 1 week. And so we had 46 patients to operate in the week. When Tensa arrived, she had quite severe malaria, so we couldn't operate. We treated her for her malaria quite aggressively and prayed that she would be better to operate before I left. And she was. So we took her to theatre on the last day of theatre, of operating, and we operate under spinal anaesthetic, so she's awake during the operation. And Tensa, bless her, she's singing very peacefully and calmly as we operate. And the anaesthetist starts singing with her, and so does my assistant surgeon start singing with her. And they're all singing in Dinka or Nuer, so I can't remember which language, and I'm the only white fellow there, and I have no idea what they're singing. And I say, oh, what's she singing? And they say, she's singing Jesus, There Is No One Like You. And so I spoil the atmosphere and join in. And but it was really such a rare moment. I've had a few moments in my life just of mutual praise and adoration of God with people from all around the world. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment.
That's one woman. Do you have any idea how many women you've operated on?
Roughly, yes. I've been involved in the care of about 16.5, maybe even 17,000 women now. Been the lead surgeon for about 8,500, maybe approaching 9,000 now. I haven't added it up for a while. But yeah, so a lot. I can't remember them all, but I can remember quite a number of them.
And what's the effect when they, walk out of the hospital with the fistula, sewn up?
Oh, it's, sometimes it's just delightful. I mean, could tell you so many delightful stories. There's one lady I had in Tanzania. She'd been living with a fistula in isolation for 50 years. The way she lived is she had a cow, and various cows over those 50 years, and that would give her some little income. And no one would go near her, but she was cured. And when she was discharged, she was so delighted. She said, I'm going to go home, I'm going to celebrate with my village by killing my cow and feeding everyone. So, so her only possession, a cow, that was the end of the cow. And she was going to celebrate with the whole village and be with them.
So does it usually restore them socially?
Yes. Yeah. If they're cured, yes. So we've done lots of research on fistula patients, depression scales, all sorts of things, and the impact on treatment. And yes, if they're cured, and the majority thankfully are, they go back to, they're very resilient people. They reintegrate, they go back to work. Sometimes there's still, post-traumatic stress syndrome, but largely they're very resilient people and they reintegrate back into their societies.
Some listeners will go, missionary doctor, what, I don't understand. Do you walk around with a big cross? What is a missionary doctor?
Well, a missionary doctor is just someone who will take your
work. Is it just
work.
A doctor who doesn't make money?
Pretty well. Well, there's probably some of those in Australia. I haven't come across them, but there's some of them. But you don't make any money. You live by faith and you're working in a different culture. So you're going away from your own culture into, called by God, and to share his love and compassion and to work for his glory in a different location, usually a different culture. So you're working in a different language, you're not paid. So we lived by faith for those 17 years that we lived abroad. I'm back in Australia now, but still working in that sort of mission capacity, that I don't work in Australia really. I just travel backwards and forwards to Africa and raise money in Australia for our hospitals and charities and so forth. And so missionary doctors, we live by faith. We help the poorest of the poor that couldn't afford anything and serve them in the name of Christ.
I'm sure some listeners, whether Christian or otherwise, might be skeptical at this point. Those sneaky Christians using healthcare as a way of proselytizing the locals. We really need to do a whole episode on missionaries, which will be partly mea culpa and partly some level setting, some undeceiving. One of the best kept secrets of history is that Christians invented the public hospital, free medical care, in the mid-300s AD, and it had nothing to do with converting people and everything to do with the early Christian belief that Jesus had healed people as a core part of his ministry. So even if we can't miraculously heal people on the same scale that he did, we use whatever resources we have to mend what is broken in the world. And that tradition continued right into the modern world, long before there was any government or secular organizational interest in global health. Andrew says locals are nowhere near as cynical about Christian missionaries as Western critics are.
Wherever I've been in Africa, missionaries have a wonderful reputation. There's some exceptions to the rule, of course, but as soon as you say that you're with a mission, the attitude from the locals will change because they know that you're there to love them, to serve them, to be with them. And it's the missionaries who stay with them through the difficult times. They learn the language, they help them, they educate them in whatever, they treat them, they teach them to be doctors, they teach them to be nurses, they teach them to read. I mean, most of the languages in Africa have been put into writing because of the missionary endeavour. So, missionaries went compelled by the love of Christ for humanity. As Christians, we believe that all people are made in God's image. And across Africa, about 50% of healthcare is provided by the church. It's extraordinary. Yeah. And when you say about imperialistic attitudes, it's difficult to say politely, but government aid, always comes with strings attached.
Yeah.
We'll give you this money, but you will do X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
And often it's against the cultures of that country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Christians, they've been with the people, loving the people, serving the people, sometimes imperfectly, oftentimes imperfectly.
Yeah.
But when the locals, anyone sees that they're loved by people, it makes all the difference. But when you're dictated to, we'll give you money if you do this, it's a totally different relationship.
And missionaries don't do that with the faith. It's because some people might think, it's just like governments. You say to people, become a Christian and I'll give you this surgery.
I've never seen that.
No.
If a hospital was like that, it wouldn't be a Christian hospital.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's all amazing. Some of my listeners who aren't sure what to make of the Christian faith might be listening to us thinking, why does that bloke do that? What's the reason? And for sure, some of them will be thinking, is he trying to purge some guilt, earn points to get into heaven? Seems the only logical explanation.
Why do I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's love, isn't it? I think. And let me tell you one story before I answer that more fully. There's a story from a patient. I've learned so much from my patients, more than I've given to them, I'm sure. It was from a lady. I was working in Ethiopia. She was from Somalia, and she had a dreadful fistula and had travelled by camel for weeks across desert to get to Addis Ababa in the hope of a cure. But her injuries were so severe that nothing could be done. So I tried, because as a surgeon you want to try. But as I was operating, I realised this is hopeless. There's almost no bladder left. no urethra left, no birth canal. Did what I could. Really, nothing could be done. So we cared for her though, and after the operation, after she had recovered, I took her with a translator and I said, look, there's really nothing we can do to make you normal again. We can help you live with this injury. We can give you pads. We can look after you, but we can't make you normal again. And she just looked at me and she said, you know, you've done something to me. You've looked after me. All my own people have neglected me. They ridiculed me. They wouldn't allow me near them. And but you're not from my language. You're not from my religion. You're not from my culture. You're not from my skin color. You're not from my gender. But you've put your arm around me. You've helped me off the bed. You've tried to help me by doing an operation. You've cared for me. You've loved me. And that's enough. And that's, I think, true, isn't it? I mean, there's a wonderful verse in the Bible that love never fails. All our knowledge, all our tongues, our prophecy, whatever, it will pass away. But, when completeness comes, when we see Jesus again, all those things will pass away. We'll know him fully, but the things that will remain are faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of those is love. And I've found that over and over in my life, that showing love changes people. And what is the source of that love? It has to be, you can love best when you're loved yourself, I think. And as a 14-year-old, I realized that Jesus did die for me, the creator of the world, the creator of the universe. He was so interested in me that he shed his blood on the cross for me, but didn't stop that he rose so I could still know him. And to have that be aware of that transformative love just changes you. And so you don't care about material possessions. They all pass away. I mean, I could have earned a lot of money here. I had a big house, a boat. Not just in boats, I get sick on them, but holidays and all sorts of things. But you're not interested in that anymore. You're interested in loving people because God loves them too. And when you see these people, they're broken. They're at the lowest of the low. They're rejected. No one will come near them. They stink. But just to hold their hand, to help them, to show them that they are loved and valuable, I mean, that's, wonderful. And there's many, not to say that my life has been easy. We've been through a lot of personal suffering as a family, individual suffering, danger, illness, without food, without electricity, without water, all those things we've faced over and over. And there's times that you just scream out saying, God, get me out of here, get me somewhere comfortable. But then you have a glimpse of God and all sorts of ways and other people around you, and that gives you the strength to keep going. And so, yes, I mean, when I look at people doing this work in the developing world, I generalize and I kind of split them into three groups. There's the people that work for the big organizations like the UN and World Food Programme, that sort of thing. There's people that come over with all sorts of altruistic ideals, want to save the world, want to do something that's impactful. And then there's the Christians that are coming because they feel called by God and strengthened by God to serve and just neglect their needs to serve others. The UN people, don't want to signal them out, but the big NGOs, the only time I see them really is if I'm ever upgraded to business class in the airport lounges. They had lived very comfortable lives. It's a very privileged career, a very comfortable career, big salaries. It's an industry, it's a career. And I don't really see them on the ground. The altruistic people, some exceptions of course, but generally they might last 2 years and then they're burnt out. But the people that stay with the people, love the people, learn the language, be through the hardships, sacrifice, they're the ones that have their faith in God and want to share that love with those around them. So, why do I do it? There's all sorts of passages in the Bible, like the rich young ruler, he wanted to do things. What can I do to inherit eternal life? That's nonsense. It's what God has done for us in giving his life for us on the cross, isn't it? That gives us life and hope and gives us the strength to do this work.
Andrew Browning, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, Andrew would never ask me to do this, but if you were moved by what you heard in this episode, please go and check out the Barbara May Foundation, which makes the work of Andrew and his Aunt Valerie possible. They're doing amazing work in this important medical field, and they're training the next generation of medical professionals to deal with this, both in Ethiopia and elsewhere in Africa. Really easy to find, just go to our show notes, but if you want to go to the source itself, just head to the barbaramayfoundation.com. That's barbaramayfoundation.com. See ya.
An Undeceptions podcast.